G'day everybody, Coop here, and in this video I'm going to try and quickly show you how to do a very cool little special effects, a floating text that you can have in your game. It's going to appear at a point that you define and it's going to sort of drift off in a certain direction before being destroyed. So it should look a lot like the kind of a text you would expect in an MMO or a sort of an RPG. Imagine attacking a training dummy in the game and your attack damage appears or your DPS appears. You don't necessarily have to use it as just damage. It could be used as something like if the player picks up an item or some treasure or anything you like. It doesn't have to be a number. That's just the context that I'm going to be using here today. So it's really easy. We only need a couple of things. There's only two scripts that we're going to need, but we are going to need to set up an object to sort of handle the text, something to move around, and it's going to be a canvas. It's going to be a UI object in our world. So we'll set that up first of all. The first thing we'll want a UI canvas. If we add that into the world, we can see it's appeared here. It's added an event system, don't worry about that. I'm just going to give it a name. I'll call it something like damage text canvas. Should be fine. And importantly, we're going to set that to world space. So that's going to change the options a little bit. We'll set the camera to be the scene main camera. And the rest is pretty okay at the moment. You can sort of play with a lot of this stuff if you have problems or you need to define the object to be drawn in front of the canvas to be drawn in front of other canvases and things like that. At the moment we don't need to worry about any of that. So to that canvas we're now going to add a text element, which is there. We can put anything we like in there. I'll just put it as 999 to give us something to work with. And we might focus on that as well, so we can see it here. It's sitting in the center of the canvas. Obviously these are a little big and we'll need to work on that. So what we want is an object in the world. For reference, I'm going to create a cube. We'll put that at 0 and we'll focus on it. Press F. There it is. I'm just going to call it player cube. Player's fine, we'll call it player. This is just an object to represent something in our world, a player object or whatever. It's just something that I can use. And we're going to take that canvas, and what we might do is center it so it is also sitting at 0, 0. Which we can see there. It's still massive. Now because it's a world space canvas as well, we'll want to reduce the size of it. So I might just make it, well, the cube's going to be 1 unit by 1, so we'll set it to that. So the canvas should now be the same size as the cube. Cool. We still have the text element, which is still on that. It's centered. And at the moment, it's still pretty big. So we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to set that to best fit. I'll just maybe play with the, I don't know, just adjust those. I'll leave the font as it is. You guys can obviously set that to whatever you like. And might just set the width to something ridiculous. I'll just try this out for now. And I'm going to reduce the scale of it. So the size here, we want to leave fairly big, and I'm going to set the scale to be a lot smaller. 0.01. How big is that? There we go. That's looking a bit better. We can see it down there in the game window. I'm going to center it. And I'll just focus on that again. And go up, just so I can see it. Alright. Probably doesn't need to be that wide, so I might just drop that a little bit. 150 should be fine. That seems like a good size to me. I'll just set the text color to be black so I can see it. So, you know, it's nothing fancy, but imagine this sort of appearing and going up from the object. That's sort of what we're looking for. I'm going to set that to be centered again, and I'm going to make sure that the canvas itself is centered. It is. And we're going to turn that into a prefab. Just going to drag that down here. There we go. Now in the case of canvases, it is important that the prefab itself is centered, especially if it's a world space canvas. We do want that, just mostly because if we create this in the world and it has a different position on the prefab, it's going to actually stick to that. So if this was a little bit higher and we spawned it, it would appear above the object. We don't necessarily want that. Cool. Alright, so we have we have everything there that we want. We have our prefab. We don't need to make any changes to that. And we have our player, in quotation marks, the cube sitting here. Nothing's going to happen if we run the game yet, so we'll want to start working on that. First thing we'll do, we'll create a C# script. We'll just call it hit player. So this is going to be the script responsible for actually doing something when we click or if we interact with the player. So I'll open that up. Yep. Let's get rid of these. Okay, so what do we need? We'll want a couple of values. So the first thing we need to know is if we'll store the player object just so we can get the position from it. So I'll do a serialized field, private, game object, player object. And we're also going to need a copy of that prefab that we created. So we'll do the same again. We'll call it hit marker prefab. Cool. We might be a little tricky too. I'm going to create an array of colors, which we will fill out in the editor. Marker colors. And we can use this to control the color of the text, just for a bit of fun. And we'll probably want a time as well. So we want to kill this marker object off fairly soon after it's created. We don't want it sitting around in the world. So I'll create a float. We'll just say marker kill time, or timer. Kill time sounds better. Alright. And we'll fill those out in the editor in a moment. What do we need? So we'll just get some sort of input. So I'll do a void update. What do we want? We'll say if you click the mouse button. How's that? If input dot get mouse button down, left mouse, and we'll create a function. We'll just say hit now, which we'll do down here. Hit now. If I could get all my brackets right, that'd be helpful. And not a lot to that. So all we're doing is if we click the mouse button, we run this function, and this function doesn't do a lot just yet. Okay, so let's go back to our object. What we probably want to do as well, we'll set the prefab itself to be inactive, just because when it's created in the world, it's going to have that 999 text there. We could probably code around that, but this seems a little bit simpler. All we're going to do is when we spawn this object, we will then set it to active, just so it can be seen. I think that's probably just a good sort of habit to get into there. I'll get rid of the one that's in the scene. Okay, I think that's set up. Cool. Let's get back to coding this one. Alright, so we'll want to create one of those prefabs in our world, and we'll probably want a reference to it so we can then update it. So we'll say a game object, new marker, and we're just creating a temporary one here. Instantiate. What is it? Hit marker prefab. So we're creating a copy of that prefab. We're going to create it at the player objects transform.position, and we'll just give it the default rotation. That should do for now. We'll set it to active. Whoops. That's better. No, that's not right at all. Set active. That's what we want. Alright, cool. And we're going to attach a script to the prefab, which we'll write in a second. So we will probably want to access that and update a few things. So we'll add another line to the script in a moment once we've done that. But the other thing we want to do for now is we want to destroy this object. The new marker .game object is what we're destroying, and we're going to do it after the marker kill time has elapsed, just by adding that second parameter in there. So it's going to create the object, make it active, do some other stuff which we haven't coded yet, and then it's going to destroy the object after a set amount of time. That's all we need for this script for now. So we're going to create another script, and this is going to be the one that goes on the prefab itself. And, you know, excuse my poor project organization here. This is just an example. I'm sure you'll forgive me. I'll call it, I don't know, damage marker controller. Sounds good. So the script that controls the damage markers themselves. Has that opened? What are you doing? Here we go. No, it hasn't. Love it when it does this. There we go. Cool. Alright, and we're going to need to access the UI in this one. So using Unity Engine.ui. Look at me, I remembered to do it first. Ha! Awesome. And we're going to need to access a text element, so we'll store a reference to that. Private text, my text. That's going to be the text that is attached to this object. We'll want a couple of other values. We'll say a private float move amount, so this is going to be how much it moves each frame. We'll do the same for a speed value, so private float move speed, and we'll set those up soon. Now we're going to need an array, private vector3 array, and I'm doing this to give you guys an example. Like, you would probably only ever want the text to really just move upwards, but let's say you want to apply a bit of a direction to it, you want it to move diagonally. Well, I'm just going to show you quickly how to do that in a very basic way, and hopefully you can sort of work with that. We're going to need a vector3 now to store the direction this one's going to move. So this script is going to be on each instance of the marker object itself. So each one, I'm going to give it a random direction to move in, so not just up, it's going to move a little bit diagonally as well. And because each instance is going to have its own direction, we're going to store a reference to that. And the last thing we'll probably want is just a bool can move. So when it's first created, we probably don't want it to move straight away. It's really not going to make a huge difference. The timing of it's going to be so quick that it's irrelevant, but it's just a good habit. This way you can set the object up and then tell it to move when you want it to move. So I'm just going to include that to make life a bit easier. So private void, and I'm going to have a start. We'll have the start function. We're just going to set up that moveDirs array, so set up the directions that we want. I'm just going to do this manually, or so to speak, like via code. And we'll say we always want it to go up, and we'll probably want it to go diagonally upwards, left and right. So we'll say transform dot up plus transform dot right, and we'll do the same again, but for left, transform dot up plus minus transform dot right. So only 3 directions at the moment, and because it's a canvas, we're going to be looking at it sort of dead on every time. So we'll just want it to go sort of diagonal left or diagonal right. We don't really need to worry about forwards or backwards in this case. Should be pretty easy. And we'll just say my moveDir, so the direction that this particular instance is going to move in, is going to equal moveDirs, and we'll just grab one of those at random range, 0, and moveDirs dot length. And because we're keeping these as ints, we can just use length. We don't need to -1 from it. The random.range will do that for us, so to speak. And we'll want an update function, let private void update, and this is where we're actually going to move the object, and it's going to be really easy. We'll just say if the can move bool is true, we are going to update the transform dot position using vector3 dot, I don't know, move towards. You can use whatever you like, you can lerp or whatever. Transform dot position, we're moving between the transform position and the transform position plus the my moveDir. So ideally each frame we're going to be moving between the current position and then the current position plus the direction that we're moving in. So it's just moving between those 2 positions. Should do it fairly smoothly. And so it wants a third value. If you haven't used this before, it needs, so this is sort of going to be the speed of the object, so to speak. We are going to use the move amount. So this is how much it's going to move each time. And we're going to times that by the move speed times time dot delta time. Keep it relative. Cool. That's all we need for the moving. And the last thing we probably want now is we want a function that we can call on this object, public void, and it's going to be set text and move. That'll do. And we'll give it 2 parameters. We'll say we'll probably give it a string. We'll get it to take a string, and that'll be the text string, and we'll give it a color. Text color. Oops. Alright, so now we haven't grabbed a reference to the text object yet, so we'll do that when this function's called. So we'll say my text is going to equal get component in children, because this script is going on the canvas, not the text object. And we'll just tell it to get text. There should only be one attached to it, so this should work without any problems. Can move is going to equal true, so the object can start moving. We'll probably make that the last thing that it does actually. So the next thing we'll do after getting the text component is we're going to set the color of the text. So my text dot color is going to equal text color, which is the color we're giving it in the parameters, and my text dot text is going to equal the text string that we give it. Nice and easy. Cool. So when we create this object, ideally we're going to run this function straight away, and we're going to tell it what text to display and what color to display it in. And to do that, we'll do it from the hit player script. Should be nice and easy. We only need, I think, the one line. So we've created the new marker object here, and I think we can do this. Not sure if we need to do it after we activate the object. I'll just do it here to be safe. New marker dot get component. And the component we're getting is that other script on the instance, so the damage marker controller. Set text and move, and we'll give it 2 parameters. Because we're doing the context here is sort of damaging, I guess, I'll give it a random value. So we'll say random dot range between 0 and 101, so it'll always be between 0 and 1. Dot to string, just to ensure we're giving it a string. And what's the other thing we need? We need a color. So I'll do this on a new line so it's easier to see. So we'll say marker colors, and we'll just pick one at random. Once again, you could do this however you like. You can give it whatever color you like. You don't even have to give it a color. It's entirely up to you. I'm just giving you some examples here. Marker colors dot length. So we're just grabbing one at random out of the array. Cool. I think that's pretty much all we need from the script. So like I said, it's fairly easy to do. We'll go and we'll need to assign these scripts to the different objects. So what do we have? We have the damage marker controller, so that's going on the prefab itself. So I'm just going to drag that onto the prefab, and we'll have a quick look. All we need to do is set up the speed. Move amount I'll set to, I don't know, 5. Move speed I'll set to 0.5 just to test with. We'll see how that goes. And the hit player, I'm just going to attach that to the player itself. Doesn't really matter where that goes. We'll need to drag in the player's object. So you could probably even just use get component, but you know, whatever. Or this dot object. And we want the prefab. Cool, and here we go. So we'll want a couple of colors. Let's say 3. And I'll just set those up now. We'll have a red one. We'll have a green one. Notice I'm setting the alpha value there because by default it will be transparent. And I don't know, yellow. How about yellow? Yellow sounds good. There we go, nice bright yellow. Yay. And I'll set a kill time of, we'll say 1.5, which I think is 1.5 seconds about. Alright. That should be good to go. I'll just give that a quick run. Let's test it. If I haven't forgotten anything, which I usually have, if we click on it, there we go, we get our text. We can click on it a heap of times, get a bunch of different texts, and you can see it's sort of applying that random direction. Like I said, it's not the prettiest in the world. It would sort of be up to you guys to you know, have some nicer font and size it all appropriately, and you obviously can adjust these positions a bit better so they're not just flying off to the side. You could even randomize the start position so that it's not dead center of the object. You could have it move a little bit to the left or the right or up or down or whatever. But the important thing is you can sort of just see the core idea, the core mechanic, which is, you know, we're just creating that canvas element, we're creating it, updating the text on it, and then telling it to move away and destroy itself at a certain time. So we can probably adjust that a little bit already, like if maybe I'll up the speed a little bit. Just try that again. You know, it's not the best in the world, but you get the idea. Cool. There you go, guys. As always, I hope that's helped you out, and if you do like this video, please like it, and please subscribe to my channel to hopefully be able to provide you a bit more. As mentioned in my previous video yesterday, I have started a Patreon page too, so links are down in the description and at the end of this video. Till next time, guys, take it easy, and I'll talk to you then.